super excited to have Cathi Hight being interviewed today, and I just want to share with you that I've known Cathi Hight for years through Institute and through her coming to speak at the Washington Chamber of Commerce Executives. She's a industry consultant, and she's really pushing the envelope, I'd like to say, on this change management or strategic alignment. We're really trying to look at chambers with a fresh eye, and Cathi is out in front on this. So, Cathi, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks, Frank, for inviting me. I'm excited to be here, too.
Very good. Would you mind sharing a little bit of your background and what you do for chambers?
Sure. Well, I came out of a chamber background as well. I was VP of Operations for the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii, which is a nice place to do chamber work. And as you know, state chambers focus primarily on advocacy and economic development. And then I went off on my own, and I've been involved, have had a nice relationship with ACCE for a long time. I used to do a lot of their membership development workshops around the country, and I've been an institute instructor for about 12 years, so that's been exciting as well. And I kind of live and breathe a lot in terms of what we do as a chamber. It's just on a whole different level than when I was with the chamber.
Yeah, times certainly are changing, aren't they?
Yeah, they sure are.
So tell me about what you're seeing as you consult with chambers across the country and you speak at the state chamber conferences. Are we at a pivotal moment in the evolution of chambers, do you think, maybe?
Yeah, I do. It's a scary time, and yet it's an exciting time because I think you can always redesign yourself anytime along the way. But I think all the changes that we've seen over the last few years, the discussions that chamber folks have been talking about in terms of are we still essential, with technology and social media, a lot of people are wondering whether or not chambers are obsolete, and I don't think we're obsolete. I think we're just at a place where we need to sort of refine who we are and what we do, and I think it's a perfect opportunity. So it's almost like we are caught up in that chasm of change, and yet it can provide some really good opportunities too.
Yeah, it's I don't know which culture it's from necessarily, but they say change equals opportunity. Yeah, you have to face it.
Yeah, it's actually Chinese, and the symbol for change, I think, is something about opportunity with chaos. Yeah. And I think that's a perfect example of I think where the chamber industry is change is not necessarily a bad thing if you look at change as an opportunity.
So how are you helping chambers, or what are you seeing that chambers need to be aware of today?
I think that for chambers, to a great extent, I'm not saying that we're on autopilot, but it just means that our program of work hasn't changed as dramatically, over the last 50 years in terms of networking and education and just the things that we're known for. But I think the change that we're seeing, and there are several chambers around the country, I think, who are really responding to the change, is that they need to really ask themselves who they are in the community, who they want to be known for, and making sure that there's a sense of correlation between what the business community needs and what the chamber has to deliver on. And of course, that's different in every community. But I don't think we can be on an autopilot mode anymore in terms of the Christmas parade or business after hours, and everything's just on our calendar and it occurs monthly without really any significant changes.
So would you say that if somebody's coming aboard to run a chamber, they can't come aboard as a manager necessarily just to do things as we've always done them? They got to be much more entrepreneurial and open to innovation? Yes,
very true. I think like John Taylor, for instance, who is the new Boulder chamber exec, is doing a great job in the sense that probably for the first 30 or 60 days, And I heard Joe Reagan at St. Louis talk about this as well, basically doing a listening tour and taking that time to really go out and talk to community leaders and investors and kind of get a perspective on how they see the chamber, what the chamber does well, what kinds of things do they feel the chamber is not doing as well, or where the disconnect is between the needs of the business community and the chamber, and really taking a hard look. So not just jumping in and keeping everything normal, but really sort of taking that time to assess where we are and what kind of leadership do I need to bring to the chamber.
So when you're asking your members and community, what do you want from the chamber? I think a lot of chambers make the mistake of just asking their current membership, how are we doing?
Yeah.
That's not a very good survey, is it?
No, it's not. In fact, with the things that I've been doing over the last year are really around what I call strategic alignment, and spending some time picking out some key community leaders to interview, and they should represent some different industry sectors, but also the public sector, educational sector, and they don't have to be members. They're just pillars in the community and really getting a good assessment. And I find that's oftentimes done better in an interview format rather than a survey, because sometimes people say things and you want to drill down a little deeper. But even on the membership survey, you have to kind of expand that out and to also extend that to some non-members, a targeted non-member list. And you might ask some different questions, but there's certainly some similar core questions. But you're right, I think you have to pay attention to not just your members, but who you don't have as members, because if you don't align with them, they're never going to become members.
Yeah, exactly. So Danny Hearn, who we interviewed a little bit ago, talked about he gives his staff kind of, not carte blanche necessarily, but a long rope to make mistakes, to try things out and these sort of things. And I see our culture very much against making a mistake or having any failures on your record or anything like that. We're really going to have to get beyond that, aren't we? Again, is kind of leading the way on that.
Yeah, we are. And one of the things that I've done with the chamber staff after listening to the members and the community leaders is using the membership program matrix that was first talked about in the Race for Relevance book, but customizing the criteria and really letting the staff have an in-depth analysis of everything that the chamber offers in terms of a program, and being able to be honest about how much time it takes them, what the real ROI is, how many members actually use a particular program, and looking at the low ratings and being able to say, I think we should discontinue those programs, and really giving them that opportunity to, one, kind of have a voice and to be able to stop a particular program if that makes sense, and then think about what could replace it. That they think might work, and that's what Jay and Little Rock Chamber, for instance, has been doing since the first quarter. And they talked about, maybe this is a good time to reach back out to the members to say, hey, we heard you, we made some changes. What do you think about what we've been offering over the last quarter, or first half of the year? And get some feedback and be able to refine it. So you really aren't making a mistake by trying something new, but you do have to check in with people to find out, is this working, both for you? Are you getting the value out of it? Is this what you were talking about last year when you gave us that feedback? Because maybe what they told you last year is different now, and so being able to continue to make that change. So you're right, it's not bad to let them try some new things, but they have to realize that it's never going to be perfect, and it's going to be a work in progress, and that the refinement's going to continue. But if we don't try something new, we'll never move away from the model that we've had.
Yeah, what I like to tell people is you have to change. Just don't be rash about it. Do your due diligence. Don't take the biggest risk in the world. Don't be precipitous, but make little fence, go in here and try some things out. At the very least, you'll learn something, and it's not a failure if you've learned something.
No.
And you have to do this continually now, because this is the world we live in, a changing world.
Yeah, it is. It is, and the members' needs are going to continue to change as well. You know, and I'm really happy that Casey Steinbacher in the Durham Chamber won that exciting award. And I remember when she was talking at the Carolina Chamber Exec Conference and talking about how she spent a year doing about 50 interviews with non-members, emerging entrepreneurs, and really listening to them. And so this whole idea about, you know, having the workspace and the co-working spaces that she's helped to create in the Durham community really came from those conversations, not just with non-members, but the 50 non-members. So that's going to, I mean, this is something different that they tried, right? They did this for the first time last year, and look, they won this, you know, World Chamber Congress Award, really, for being innovative. So she's kind of leading the way of saying, why not? Why not try it? Like you said, the worst case scenario, it didn't work, and we'll try something else.
Sure.
But it did work for them.
Right. Well, what do you do with your board members that aren't necessarily part of this daily conversation? They don't have an industry background, and they certainly don't want any failures on their watch while they're on the board, especially the new chairman of the board. When you're working with chambers, do you have to make your board part of this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, you know, what we did is we started off with the key community leader interviews. We shared those with the board, the executive committee, and then the board, so they got to hear, you know, firsthand what people were saying. I mean, all the responses were anonymous, so we weren't, you know, going to set any of those community leaders up for any kind of repercussion, but really kind of giving them the key themes, and here's what people said, here's how they see the chamber. So they got that, and you know, some of them were ones that were interviewed as well. So there's a little bit of buy-in to kind of seeing, oh, other people thought like I did, and some people thought a little differently than me. So I think it's important that they're part of that interview process, and then they got to see the results of the membership survey and the staff review of the program matrix. So they were involved every step of the way. They always got feedback with each piece that we did, so that by the time we got to the place where we were making recommendations and changes to the organizational structure to better support the new direction, they were totally fine with that. It was a precursor to their strategic planning session. So they took all that information in and then went in to do that strategic plan, and they came out with a plan that they had all supported and helped designed, but it was based on what I call kind of like an outside-in strategy. So they took that feedback and leveraged that in that strategic planning process. So the board actually owns really all the changes and the direction the chamber is going in. So that's how you have to bring them into the process.
Very interesting. It occurs to me that in the 20th century, chambers would do one annual planning meeting. You bring together the board and the staff, you know, the high-level staff. You go off-site for a day, maybe 2 days. And I think that probably worked in the 20th century when things were fairly static and you didn't want to make too many changes because the model worked.
Right.
If you're only going to meet once a year today and you're going to create a 3-year plan, time's just moving too fast for that, I think.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, that's true. In fact, I was interviewing another chamber yesterday who's going to be on one of the ACCE panels on this whole concept about strategic alignment. And what's really cool is they had created a futures council. And it was made up of 30 representatives of different industries and sectors in the community, mostly members, but they also had some non-members. And that's actually going to be an ongoing group for them. So that helped them with that strategic planning, but they continue to listen to what they think is going on in the community and leveraging the Futures Council to kind of help them to navigate some change. So I like that. I think that's a really cool idea to have a voice of a group of businesses that you can continue to bounce things off of and get some feedback from.
What other interesting things are you seeing around the nation from chambers that the audience here of chamber execs and chamber leaders might find interesting?
You know, it's really funny, but I think the chambers who seem as if they're, of course, every community is different. And we talk about, you know, when you've seen one chamber, you've seen one chamber. Although I think that the chambers who are kind of taking back economic development or really being really great partners in economic development, seem to be doing very well. And I think it's because they are seen as that leader in the community who is really about driving a very, very successful community that really does produce jobs and really does produce change. So I think I'm seeing more and more of that. Mm-hmm. Of course, it depends, again, on the size of the chamber, the community that you're serving. But I think it's good to really ask yourself, what does my community need today? And Casey talked about that too at the Carolina Chamber Conference. She said, you don't have to do what I'm doing. You have to do what's right for your community. And you have to really look at that. But I think where the change is that you have to really see the chamber leader as being the leader that is credible and recognized and has a seat at the table in that community.
What are you seeing among retention rates among chambers and generational shifts? Are the baby boomers leaving us in droves like we know they will eventually?
I think the recession sort of kind of hurt a lot of the baby boomers, and so they may not be exiting quite as fast because they don't have that 401k or retirement plan necessarily ready to go. But, listening to Sarah Sladek and other people talk about how that Y generation is definitely going to dominate the workforce in 2020, which is really not that far away. I think we have to integrate them more into the chamber and really make sure that they're present in all of our committees and councils and on our board, so that it's not just the YP group, but it's kind of more of an integrated approach, because you don't want them to be siloed and separate. You really want them to be part of it. I think one of the shifts, though, that Y generation and the generation that follows is going to bring to the chamber world is that benefits need to be virtual as well. They don't always have to be face-to-face. And I think that's the gift they bring us, is that whole digital and the whole use of technology, and how we can still create engagement around technology is sort of what they're going to bring, and that's going to continue to help to shape what the chambers do, because we do so many face-to-face events, but not everything has to be face-to-face.
And digitally, you can deliver trainings now digitally.
Yeah, like this.
Yeah, it's just really fascinating here how you can use technology to deliver services when the member wants it and how they want it. And it's going to take the young people that are used to using these things in college and such to say, why don't we deliver it in this manner?
Oh, yeah. And, like what I'm seeing, because, part of my work is also working with corporations, doing management development. And a lot of my corporate clients whose median age of their employees is about 28, mm-hmm. Their whole demands for training are different. Like they're saying, Cathi, I can't bring them together for a day. I can't even bring them together for a half a day. I need you to develop training that's modular, that's maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes segments. They need to be asynchronous webinars, things that people can access on their own whenever they want to. We're not doing as much face-to-face training, and what we're trying to create is a learning organization that really allows multiple mediums to be used, and our young people to really be able to plug in, and their attention span's not that long right now, and so we can't even do a 2-hour training. They really need to be 20 to 45 minutes ideally, and that I've seen that push from them, which has forced me to change my whole delivery mode. And I think that, it's the same thing with the chamber. If these people are expected to come to our events and our programming, you have to realize that, the delivery for them may have to be different as well.
It's almost like we have to take everything the chamber has ever done, kind of segment it into this is training, this is in-person networking, and look at it with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
And be brutally honest, even though it's a sacred cow, or even though there's some people on our board that don't do technology and things of this nature that are really not trying to keep up because they're on their way, they're going out, they're retiring. And so they're not invested in change management and cultural change and all these sort of things. And those people might criticize us if we get rid of something that they're used to for 40 years.
Yeah.
If we innovate, if you don't innovate, the end is near, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Like a great example is the British Columbia Chamber partnered with a training organization that already had hundreds of online courses, and partnered with them to deliver online training to their chamber members at a discounted price. Right, and it's
Right.
available 24/7. So it's not like the chamber necessarily needs to offer those things themselves. They can use their partnerships to do that. But I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing great examples of chambers actually leverage multimedia types of opportunities to make them available to their members. And so that's kind of fun and exciting at the same time. You know what I love is being an institute instructor, because I love listening to what kinds of things the association world is doing, because that's actually where most of the innovation is that I see.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're serving a large audience that's geographically dispersed, whether they're a statewide association or a national association, they can't have everything face to face, and so they tend to invest in opportunities that really provide a lot of these virtual benefits. And I think we can learn a lot from the things that they're doing, because they're doing some cool things like virtual conferences and virtual expos, and they're really playing a lot with innovation to say, how can we bring this to our members in a format where they can participate and not necessarily come here, right? And I think we have to look at what they're doing and say, that's interesting. I wonder if we could do that.
And I think the role of a chamber when it comes to things like these virtual trainings and this is the member could go directly to that. They could Google search for human resource training, but they get 1,000 or 100,000 returns, and it's too much information. They don't know who's credible. If the chamber does the due diligence and then the chamber supplies it or facilitates it, and you get a discount, now there's a great reason to be a member of the chamber.
Oh, yeah. I've been working with the Boulder Chamber on a brand new membership structure. And one thing that we've asked ourselves, for every type of member that we have, we're trying to bring access, resources, and solutions. What does that look like? And we realize that a lot of times the members just want access, just like you said, right? Sure, could they find that service on their own? Could they get that door to open on their own? Yes, but it would take a lot of work, it would take a lot of time, and yet if we can provide that conduit for them, and it's just a one-point contact and here it is, right? You've saved them time and you've made it more convenient for them. So you're right, it's just like you could Google things and get 1 million results, right? But really all you want are the top 3. Right. So the chamber can sort of navigate that and bring them the best of the best and make them available. Then that's going to make that difference for them.
Interesting. Well, one final question, and then we'll go. Danny Hearn mentioned that he's not even calling members anymore. There's stakeholders and there's investors. Do you think we got to be very open-minded here to what a chamber is and a membership organization is?
Yeah, I mean, we know it's definitely still going to be a membership-based organization, at least for now. Although I think I was sharing with you in some of the readings that and I'm an avid reader, they talk about, well, like what would happen if an association didn't have members or you didn't call them members. And so a lot of that thinking that Danny has about stakeholders, investors, and it's supposed to be their organization. So a stakeholder or investor is probably a more appropriate word, because it's a little different than just being like a member of AARP. Well, the reality is, can you really change what they're doing? Maybe, maybe not when you have so many members, right? But stakeholder or investor implies that you do have a say. And so maybe it makes more sense, and I think I'm seeing this in a lot of chambers where their VP or their director is not of membership, but it's investor relations, right? So it's on that higher level of saying, I recognize you as an investor in our organization.
Fantastic. Well,
yeah.
How can people get in touch with you if they want to bring you out to their state chamber conference or hire you to do a strategic alignment or watch one of your webinars? How do people get in touch with you?
Well, probably the best way is to go to the website, www.hight performance.com. And certainly I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, but that's probably the best place to start is the website. And from there, they can go to any of those other venues, join our blog and participate that way. And I love the opportunity to come because, sometimes the change that needs to happen means that you've got to bring your exec or you've got to bring other teammates to these state conferences. And so what a wonderful way to listen to a message and then to be able to go back home motivated to make those changes.
Absolutely. What's your email address?
Cathi, C-A-T-H-I, @hightperformance.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on, Cathi.
Thanks, Frank. Appreciate that.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.